Hi everyone, good day. My name is Guna. I am a Masters of Social Work student from University Utara Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. During the course of my master's study, I had the opportunity to enroll into the class of Human Behavior in the Social Environment under the tutelage of Associate Professor Dr. Zakia. This subject is a concept that describes a comprehensive view of the people and is fundamental to the study of social sciences. It integrates concepts from biological, psychological, and social sciences. It provides a framework to understand both individuals and the environment in which they live. So during my class, I've learned many new things, including different developmental stages such as infancy, childhood, adolescence, young and middle adulthood, and later adulthood. So today I'm going to talk about an issue related to my job scope and how do I relate the study of this subject to my job. To begin with my job scope, I have been working as a social worker at Women's Aid Organization, also known as WAO, for more than 4 years now. WAO is a non-profit and an NGO that works towards the elimination of violence against women and children and advocates for gender equality in Malaysia. It is one of the leading domestic violence service providers in Malaysia. At WAO, we serve, we empower, and we advocate. Under our services, we provide free and confidential services to women and children who have experienced domestic violence. Services such as free crisis consultation, temporary shelter, and case management support. We inform survivors of their rights and options so that they can make the best decision for themselves. So, this is what I do as a social worker under the services. Other than that, WAO also runs programs for women to build economic resilience so that they can rebuild their lives after abuse. We also advocate to improve policies and change public mindset by learning from women's lived realities and experiences. As such, the issue in relation to my job scope that I have chosen to share today is domestic violence, as I work closely with survivors of domestic violence. Now, what is domestic violence? As you can see in the image, there's one person beating another person. If this happens outside of home, often it is considered an assault. However, now the violence is happening at home or in an intimate relationship. The term domestic violence is also used interchangeably with domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. They all refer to the pattern of violence, abuse, or intimidation used to control or maintain power over a partner who is or has been in an intimate relationship. Fundamentally, domestic violence is about two things: power and control. So, when we speak about domestic violence, there are various forms of domestic violence, including physical, sexual, social or isolation, and financial or economic abuse, to name a few. Abusers often use more than one form of abuse to invoke fear or coerce a partner into behaving in the ways that they don't want to. In Malaysia, domestic violence is recognized as a crime by virtue of the Domestic Violence Act 1994. The Domestic Violence Act protects spouses, former spouses, children, and other family members who could be related by blood or marriage. This is a huge range. Unlike the concept of intimate partner violence, in Malaysia, the domestic violence law protects family members as well. However, it does not cover non-married couples. Now that we have learned a little about domestic violence, next I'm going to share a few of the concepts that I had learned from my class, how I relate it in terms of my job scope in assisting survivors of domestic violence. Among the first few things that I had learned in my human behavior in social environment class is employing a conceptual framework for understanding human behavior and social environment. That is a person in environment approach and recognizing people's involvement with multiple systems in the social environment. A person in environment focus sees people as constantly interacting with various systems around them. The relationship is transactional, where the client can affect her environment and also be affected by the environment. The image above illustrates an example of systems theory. It's a spectrum that establishes the involvement of multiple systems consisting of families, groups, organizations, and communities with the individuals at micro, meso, and macro levels. To micro, that being the closest to the individuals includes other individuals, friends, and families. Meso includes organizations, communities, and neighborhoods, while macro is about social norms, policies, and laws. Now let's see another example. The above figure shows a typical people in environment systems. This is an illustration of the ecological and systems theory, the combination of which is called ecosystems theory. It shows interaction between an individual and the systems or groups in their environment. In my area of work, I often use the ecosystem theory to identify a client's support system. Domestic violence survivors are often isolated from their support system by their partners in order to create dependency and maintain power over them. They are often made to feel like they cannot seek support from outside. So, when I engage with my clients, I will identify potential sources of support and reach out to people, organizations, and public services available in the client's environment. For example, if a domestic violence survivor has no place to go, as a social worker at the micro level, I am a support for the client to identify potential resources. Other than me, perhaps the client may have a relative who may be able to accommodate her temporarily. Then, at the meso level, the client also may reach out to any NGO that offers shelter services. Then, at macro level, if the availability of shelters at the social welfare department is an issue, then the client's situation can be used as feedback to identify gaps and improve government infrastructures in terms of safe shelters. The understanding of the ecosystems helps me when it comes to assisting my clients, as we will know at which level a change is needed. I often use eco maps to understand the dynamics of the relationship in a client's social circle and how the client interacts with her environment. Based on that, I would be able to determine whether a change is necessary in the client's way of interacting with her environment or the environment itself. In domestic violence situation, it involves consideration of her physical safety in the environment of the client. Therefore, I will plan interventions at micro, meso, or macro level practice depending on at which level an intervention is needed. Some of our interventions include making rescue plans for the client to escape the abusive situation, accompanying the client to have access to medical treatment at the One Stop Crisis Center, helping her to lodge a police report and have access to criminal justice system, individual counseling, individual empowerment programs, and referral to any other agencies as it may be deemed necessary. Another area that I have studied under the human behavior in social environment subject is understanding the different roles within social work. A social worker can wear many caps, and in my day-to-day job scope, there are some of the roles that I've identified. I act as an enabler, broker, and also an advocator. I build rapport with the clients and give an assurance for hope, help them manage their emotions, and help identify personal strength and social assets. This is the role of an enabler. I also help to link my clients with external community resources and services which they may not have known about previously. This is the role of a broker. And whenever my client's case does not progress well, I try to identify where the gap lies and step forward to speak on behalf of my client. No doubt, domestic violence impacts women and children at all levels: biological, psychological, and social. Therefore, it is critical that a social worker has an understanding of developmental stages of all age to understand the specific impact of domestic violence on their well-being. Here, I would like to share the psychological impact of domestic violence on one age group. If you see the chart above, which is statistics from PDRM, the highest number of survivors belong to the age group between 26 and 35, that is, young and middle adulthood. As such, let us look at the impact of domestic violence on psychological aspects of young and middle adulthood. In order to understand the impact of domestic violence on psychological aspects of young and middle adulthood, we will use Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory. In his theory, he has proposed a lifespan model of human development by breaking them down into 8 stages. At each stage, an individual has to overcome an inherent conflict or crisis as part of the development. Each stage would have a successful or unsuccessful outcome. Every individual has to work through each conflict in order to lead an integrated, meaningful, and fulfilled lives. While failure at one level does not hinder progress to the subsequent one, an unresolved developmental challenge may resurface as a problem at a later stage of life. Intimacy versus isolation is a conflict that happens to young adults during their 20s. Erikson believed that it was vital to develop close and committed relationships with other people. As people enter adulthood, these emotionally intimate relationships play a critical role in a person's emotional well being. An example of intimacy against isolation would be a person forming a healthy relationships with romantic partners in adulthood as well as social circles such as friends, acquaintances, family members, and others. Whereas isolation, on the other hand, would be marked by a lack of social connections, poor or unhealthy relationships, and a general lack of social support. Conflicts in the marriage and situations of domestic violence means very little intimacy, and this can lead to isolation in young adults. As for middle adults from ages 30s to 50s, the conflict would be generativity versus stagnation. When a woman successfully raises a family or contribute to the betterment of society, she would feel a sense of productivity and accomplishment. That is generativity. But when she is not able to or not allowed to contribute to society in these ways, she may feel dissatisfied, and that is stagnation. Some examples of generativity can involve providing children with a stable, loving, and healthy home environment or caring for elderly parents. If someone is in an abusive relationship, like in domestic violence, their focus is on surviving and may have little or no concern at all control over their ability to care for others, and that could lead to stagnation in their lives. So that's all the sharing from me today. I hope you enjoyed my little presentation. In an overview, I have applied the understanding of a person in environment approach, my role as a social worker, and the psychosocial theory in young and middle adulthood in my practice, and I find it relatable to my job scope of assisting survivors of domestic violence. I sincerely thank my lecturer Dr. Zakia for all the guidance that she has provided so far. With that, I end the presentation. Thank you.